Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got a gripping story that dives deep into the complexities of trust, betrayal, and the dark side of corporate life. In this tale, we follow Lucas Bennett, a seasoned insurance investigator, whose seemingly perfect life begins to unravel as he discovers a shocking secret about his wife, Ava. Forced into a web of deceit and manipulation, Ava's involvement in a high-stakes business deal puts their marriage, and her career, on the line. Stick around as we unravel this intense drama filled with twists and turns that will keep you on the edge of your seat. In the quiet of the night, I checked the bedside clock. It read 2:30 a.m. Ava lay beside me, fast asleep. I was relieved that this time I hadn't disturbed her, and apparently, I hadn't been talking in my sleep either. I kept having the same dream, a hazy recollection of an event 2 years ago. In it, I sat at my study desk with a half-empty bottle of scotch, an empty glass, and a cold. I'd pour a glass, gulp it down without tasting it, and check the loaded cylinder, contemplating ending lives. Thankfully, these dreams had become less frequent now, less than once every 2 months. In the dream, everything felt real, but in reality, the details were different. There was a bottle of scotch, but I was on the living room sofa. There was no cold. I don't own a gun. I never made any threats. I just got very drunk and passed out. To understand this, we need to go back 2 years. In 2019, things started to unravel. Ava and I were at odds with city inspectors over our house plans in Charlotte. It took forever to get the blueprints approved. Then we were battling with the contractor to keep things on track. We finally moved into the new place in August, but both of us were swamped with work. My name is Lucas Bennett. On March 6, 2019, Ava and I celebrated our 6th anniversary. Despite the house construction stress, everything else was fine. I've worked with Apex Investigations in Charlotte for 8 years, investigating fraud for large insurance companies. As a lead investigator, I choose and assign cases, and the work is profitable. At 30, with some gray in my dark brown hair, I'm 6 feet 2 inches and 185 pounds. People describe me as confident, with average features, and a slightly crooked nose from a college boxing match. Ava, 29, is 5 feet 8 inches with dark brown hair and blue-green eyes. She manages the accounting department at Zenith Financial, overseeing 20 accountants. Zenith specializes in mergers and acquisitions and has been successful, but early 2019 brought issues to their Charlotte office. In February, Andrew Thomas became the new manager of the Charlotte Zenith office, replacing the previous one. Andrew, about 5 feet 5 inches and slightly overweight, was likable and admired by Ava. Along with Andrew, VP Eric Harris was transferred from New York. Harris, a fit and friendly man in his mid-40s with gray hair, had a wandering eye, which made me wary despite his professional reputation. By summer, the house construction was on track, and the Zenith office disruptions had settled. Ava credited Eric with the business improvements. We moved into our new place just outside Charlotte in early August, excited about the fresh start. On moving day, I joked about making love in every room. Ava playfully led me to the kitchen, where we shared an intimate moment. Though our busy lives limited us to the bedroom most of the time, we maintained our connection there, finding time for each other despite our hectic schedules. During one of those nights, while we were making love, I brought up the idea of starting a family. We had discussed it before, and Ava had previously mentioned wanting to start trying in the fall so we could have a baby in the summer. I think it's time you stop taking your birth control pills and we start trying to get you pregnant, I suggested. I think we should wait a little longer, Ava replied. Eric suggested I wait until next year. He said I might be up for a promotion by the end of the year, so I want to wait until after that. Eric? I asked, surprised. Since when are you on a first-name basis with corporate vice presidents? We're pretty casual around the office, she explained. Why did you discuss our family plans with him? I questioned, feeling a bit irritated about her sharing our personal matters with him. He asked if we were planning to have children, so I told him we planned to start in the fall. That's when he suggested I wait until next year. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I agreed to wait until January. As 2019 ended, Ava and I were swamped with work, leaving little time for each other. Weekends were meant to be special, but work often interfered. Ava's department at Zenith was busy with a major merger contract, while I managed 3 investigations needing closure by year-end. On the last weekend of November, we both had time off and did our Christmas shopping. Over dinner, Ava shared good news. We're likely to close a deal with National Pharmaceutical by December 20th, which means I should get my promotion, she said. That's fantastic. Then we can start trying for a baby. How about tonight? I suggested. Not tonight. I'm still on the pill, and I want to settle into my new job first. And don't tell anyone about this. It could jeopardize the deal, she explained. Though disappointed, I understood. You know I won't say anything, I assured her. December is known for company Christmas parties, and both of our companies had theirs. Apex's party on December 6th was a standard event with drinks, appetizers, dinner, and dancing, but it wasn't very lively. Most Apex employees are field investigators, so we don't know each other well. My only close friend there is Josh Campbell, with whom I've worked on many cases. The rest of the team are just acquaintances, unlike Ava's close-knit group at Zenith. At the party, Ava and I sat with Josh and his wife, Sarah, enjoying ourselves despite the subdued atmosphere. We stayed until midnight before heading home, where I led Ava to our bedroom. After intimacy, we discussed our family plans, agreeing on having 2 kids spaced 2 years apart. Ava planned to stop birth control in February for a November baby, aligning with her hoped-for promotion. Though I wasn't thrilled about the wait, I understood. Saturday took a turn when I came home from work to find Ava staring out the window, clearly troubled. She didn't acknowledge me, lost in her thoughts. I waited until after dinner to ask about her mood. We had a deal. Whoever cooked could relax after dinner while the other cleaned up. Ava had cooked, so I cleaned the kitchen and then joined her in the family room. Sensing she wasn't going to bring it up, I gently started the conversation. Ava, what's going on? It's obvious something's bothering you, I said gently. Is there anything I can do to help? Ava looked at me with sorrowful eyes. There's a problem with the National Pharmaceutical deal, she said. Mr. Benson, their president, is making unrealistic demands. If we can't meet them, we might lose the contract. It could ruin everything for us. It won't ruin everything. No matter what happens, we have each other. Try not to worry too much. What's the worst-case scenario? I asked. You don't get it, she replied. If this deal falls apart, it could be because of me. And if I messed this up, I could lose my job. But how could it be your fault if you're not in sales? I asked. I can't say more. I'm not supposed to talk about it outside of Zenith. All I can tell you is that I didn't do anything wrong. If you didn't do anything wrong, then why would you lose your job? I pressed. I've said too much already. I could get into trouble just for telling you this much. Please, let me handle this on my own, she insisted. I wanted to say more, but the look on her face told me the conversation was over. On Sunday, I hoped Ava would feel better, but she seemed even more down. She avoided looking at me, and any attempt at conversation was met with silence. Monday morning, I woke up early and made breakfast, but Ava hardly touched hers. She drank her coffee quietly and headed for a shower. I cleared the snow from the driveway, and when I returned inside, Ava was already preparing to leave for work. Why are you leaving so early? It's only 6:30, I asked. I have important meetings to prepare for, she replied, giving me a quick kiss as she hurried out to the garage. Monday morning, our neighborhood had its trash collection day, so I had to gather all the waste baskets and take the trash out to the curb. I brought the baskets downstairs to the kitchen and emptied them into a trash bag. While dumping the bathroom waste basket, something fell out and disappeared. I searched for a few minutes but couldn't find it. I took the trash outside, placed it in our large plastic can, and rolled it to the curb. Returning inside, I quickly scanned the kitchen again for the lost object from the bathroom. Finding nothing, I went to take my shower and prepare for work. Ava still seemed down, so Monday evening, I tried bringing up the topic again. Is work any better now? I asked. I can't discuss it with you, she replied. I'm under a lot of pressure, but I'll manage. By Wednesday, Ava began to improve. When I arrived home that evening, she kissed me and said she loved me, which hadn't happened since Friday night. She wasn't completely back to normal, no smile, but she seemed less distant and preoccupied. Can we talk about what's happening now, or is it still off limits? I asked. I shouldn't say much, but it seems we figured out how to please Mr. Benson, she said. Eric mentioned things might turn out all right after all. I sensed relief, or maybe determination, in Ava's voice, though she didn't smile, showing her stress. It always bothered me that she called Harris by his first name while referring to Andrew Thomas as Mr. Thomas, despite Harris being a VP. That night, Ava sought comfort but wasn't interested in intimacy, and her issues weighed heavily on me. I held her until she fell asleep, but I couldn't sleep myself. After tossing and turning, I went downstairs for a drink at the kitchen island. I sipped water and glanced through the mail, then noticed Ava's briefcase. Feeling compelled, I opened it, finding papers but no clear answers. Her day planner revealed a busy schedule with meetings involving Mr. Thomas, Eric, and Mr. Benson, the president of National Pharmaceutical. I began to understand why Ava was under so much pressure. However, I was puzzled as to why she, an accountant, was meeting with the client. She hadn't been involved in negotiations for previous deals. I wondered if this meant Ava might be shifting from accounting to sales after her promotion. Ava's planner showed more meetings set with Andrew and another one with Eric on the morning of December 20th. Additionally, she had written 10 p.m. on that day. The only thing that stood out in her planner was on the month at a glance page for December. There were some entries that didn't make sense to me. On December 6th, Ava had written, started, and each day after that was numbered 1 through 14. The number 14 was marked on Friday, December 20th, circled and underlined. I wondered if this had to do with her meeting with Eric, or perhaps because it was Zenith's Christmas party day, or maybe they expected Mr. Benson to sign a contract then. I was still puzzled why she numbered the days from December 6th to 20th. I knew I needed time to figure that out. I put Ava's planner back in the briefcase and closed it. When I returned to bed, the briefcase was back on the chair where I found it. Over the next few days, Ava's mood improved, but she remained distant. Using my skills as an investigator, I pieced together that the 20th was crucial, likely the day Mr. Benson would sign the contract. On Friday, December 13th, I closed one of my 3 cases and was close to closing another. That evening, I met Josh Campbell for a beer to celebrate. I mentioned what I found in a planner, without revealing it was Ava's, describing the numbered days and the significance of the 20th. Josh couldn't help but suggest I talk to Natalie Evans, who was among the top investigators, for a woman's perspective. I dropped the topic so Josh wouldn't think I was fixated on it and start questioning why. After a bit more chatting, I headed home. It was another frustrating weekend. Ava was attentive but distant, and we went over a week without intimacy, which bothered me deeply. Monday morning, I told Ava I'd likely be working late to finish my cases. She reminded me about the party on Friday and said I needed to be home by 7 o'clock to get ready. I closed my second case on Tuesday and took Ava out to celebrate, but she claimed she wasn't feeling well, and we still didn't connect. Wednesday night was the same. I knew she was stressed with work, but my patience was wearing thin. I resolved to wait until Friday when Ava would know about the national pharmaceutical deal and her promotion. On Thursday, I almost wrapped up my last case. I hoped to finish it quickly on Friday morning but worried it might take all day, making it hard to be home by 7 o'clock as promised. During dinner, I mentioned this to Ava. She got upset, reminding me of my promise. I apologized and suggested she go without me if I was late. She reluctantly agreed to wait until 9 o'clock but insisted she couldn't be any later. I promised to do my best to be home by 7:30, and if not, I'd meet her at the party. Ava didn't say anything more. On Friday, I invited Natalie Evans to lunch. Natalie, nearly 6 feet tall with short blonde hair and piercing green eyes, had been at Apex for 4 years and was both attractive and formidable. Over lunch, I explained about the notations on the calendar without revealing it was Ava's. After some thought, she smiled. "What's making you smile?" I asked. "The numbers," she said. "It took me a bit, but I think I figured it out. You said she wrote, started, on the 6th and then numbered the days 1 to 14, With the 20th circled and underlined, right? That's correct. The 20th was highlighted. I confirmed. I think she wrote, started, on the 6th because that's when her last period began, and then she counted 14 days to the day she's most likely to conceive. Natalie explained. She's tracking her cycle because she's trying to get pregnant. Does that make sense in your case? I was surprised. Natalie not only figured it out easily, but it never crossed my mind before. I'm not certain, but it could make sense in this case. I replied. Thanks for your help. I suppose a pastrami sandwich was a fair trade for the little help I gave you. Natalie chuckled. After lunch, Natalie and I returned to the office. I spent the rest of the day on paperwork, puzzled by why Ava was tracking her menstrual cycle. She wasn't planning to stop her birth control, so it seemed odd. A tight feeling grew in my gut as fragments of information didn't add up. From my training, I knew the importance of patience and gathering all the facts before drawing conclusions. Acting hastily could have serious consequences, and patience had always been a virtue of mine. By 5 o'clock, I finished work and headed home through rush hour traffic, feeling accomplished for closing significant cases and gaining some clarity about Ava's planner. I arrived home around 5:30 p.m. I parked in the driveway and fetched the mail. As I approached the front door, I noticed the hall light was on. I peeked through the window and saw Ava at the top of the stairs, completely undressed, holding a towel and a can of shaving cream. I leaned back, not wanting to startle her, and wondered what she was doing with shaving cream. Once Ava reached the bottom step, she turned into the living room and paused next to a wing chair, appearing momentarily lost in thought. She looked stunning, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. Not wanting to startle her by opening the front door, I decided to enter through the garage so she'd hear the door and know I was home. I lingered for a moment, savoring the view, then hurried to my car. I opened the garage door, drove in, and waited until it closed before entering the kitchen. Inside, I thought I heard another door close elsewhere in the house. I moved through the kitchen, dining room, and finally the living room, but there was no sign of Ava. Ava, I'm home. I called out as I headed upstairs, entering our bedroom. I called her name again, and this time, she responded. You're home early. That's great. I'm in the bathroom, getting ready. Why don't you use the shower in the guest bathroom? Why? I asked. I'm busy here. She replied. I pretended not to hear and walked into the bathroom. What did you say? I asked. Ava was sitting on the edge of the bathtub when I walked in. She hurriedly tried to cover herself, but not before I saw what she was doing. Her hair down there was covered in shaving cream. She was about to start shaving. It was supposed to be a surprise. She explained. A surprise? For who? I questioned. For you, of course. I wanted to surprise you when we got home from the party tonight. Ava said. Did I ever tell you I wanted you to shave down there? I asked. No, but I thought that. I don't recall you ever mentioning wanting to do this. I interrupted. Where did you get the idea that I wanted you to shave? I've never said anything like that. I told her firmly. Ava struggled to find an answer, and I could feel my anger rising. I thought it might be something new. A lot of women are doing it these days, and I thought you might like it. She explained. Don't you think we should have talked about this first, to see how I feel? I asked. Maybe, but it's not a big deal. It's my body, and if I want to shave, it's my decision. It'll grow back if we don't like it. She reasoned. Her point made sense, but I wasn't ready to give in. There was more to this than just her wanting to shave. Don't do it now. I insisted. Let's discuss it later. If it's that important to you, you can shave tomorrow. Ava's expression showed not just anger but also fear. I understood the anger directed at me, but her fear puzzled me. I'm ready to do it now, so why should I wait? She demanded. Because your husband is asking you to wait. I replied. I don't want you to shave. I don't want to feel like I'm with a child. Why is it so urgent that you do it now? I was all set to do it, and I want to do it now. It's my body, and if I want to shave, I will, she asserted. Fine, go ahead and shave. But if you do, you'll have to go to the party alone, I stated firmly, turning to leave the bathroom. Why are you being so unfair? It's something I want to do, so why are you making such a big deal out of it? Ava pleaded. I'm making a big deal because I don't think you're being honest about why you want to shave. You know I like your hair, so I know this isn't about me. If you can't tell me the truth, then I won't discuss this any further. You can leave it alone, and we'll go to the party together, or you can shave and go alone. It's up to you. Ava gave me a moody look as she sat down the razor and got into the shower. After she finished, I showered and then relaxed in my bathrobe, sipping a beer while she did her makeup. She remained silent, clearly angry, so I avoided conversation to prevent further tension. Instead, I secretly watched her dress provocatively, suspecting it wasn't for my benefit but perhaps to provoke jealousy, or for someone else. Ava put on black thigh-high stockings, seemingly unaware of my gaze. She then slipped into a black cocktail dress, heading to the bathroom to fix her hair. When she finally stood before me, my anger softened, but I resisted fully letting it go, unsure of what the night would bring. At 7:30, I asked if she was ready. We drove in silence for the first 15 minutes before Ava finally spoke up. I'm sorry about the shaving thing, Ava said. I thought it was a good idea at the time, and I got nervous about tonight. I guess I snapped when you gave me a hard time. No worries, I replied. We can talk about it over the weekend. Let's just try to have fun tonight. I was trying to lighten the mood a bit. The party was catered at Zenith's offices, in a large, first-floor classroom. As soon as Ava and I arrived, Eric greeted us and pulled Ava aside. I watched them closely, feeling my tension rise. Ava nodded and shook her head during their conversation, which seemed to upset Eric. He smiled and suggested something to her, and although she didn't look pleased, she nodded. When Ava returned, she said the national pharmaceutical deal was closing that night, with a meeting at 10 o'clock with Eric and Mr. Thomas. If it went well, she'd get her promotion. Despite the news, she seemed unemotional. I asked if we could start trying for a baby afterward, and she agreed without much enthusiasm. Entering the party room, Ava linked her arm with mine. The room was nicely decorated, with tables along the perimeter, a band for dancing at one end, and a buffet and open bar at the other. I scanned the room, recognizing most faces from my 6 years of occasional encounters with Zenith. Then I spotted him, a man around 35, 6 feet tall with a trim build, dressed in a dark blue, double-breasted Armani suit, standing alone by the bar. I pointed discreetly and asked Ava, "Who's the guy over by the bar?" "I don't know," she replied, but her body language hinted otherwise. "Why don't we grab a drink at the bar?" I suggested. "Some of my colleagues are here. I want to say hello to them. Could you get us drinks, and I'll wait here?" she countered. I headed to the bar, ordered a glass of red wine for Ava and a beer for myself, then turned back towards the man in the Armani suit. "Mr. Benson, how's your evening going?" I greeted him. He looked briefly surprised. "How do you know me?" he asked. "It's part of my job," I answered. "I need to take this wine to Ms. Bennett first, then I'd like to chat with you, if you're okay with that." Mr. Benson studied me for a moment. I could sense his wariness, though he didn't seem afraid. I briefly wondered if he recognized me but dismissed the idea. It must have been something else about me that caught his attention. "Sure thing, I'll be right here," he replied. I brought Ava her drink and mentioned I'd mingle while she caught up with her friends. "Don't wander off," she insisted. "Stick close tonight." "I won't be gone long. Not in the mood to hear shop talk right now," I replied. Ava looked at me sadly as I left the table, but she didn't stop me. Once I was sure she wasn't watching, I headed back to Mr. Benson. "I'm Fred, from Zenith Security," I introduced myself. "Just ensuring everything goes smoothly tonight. Looks like Mr. Harris has planned an enjoyable evening." "That's what he's saying," Mr. Benson replied. "I'm just passing time until things kick off." Sounds like that starts around 10 o'clock for you, I remarked. You seem to know a lot, he said nervously. Part of the job tonight. I'm here to make sure you're undisturbed, especially later, I added with a wink and a smirk. You're into brunettes, right? Love them, especially with long hair? Love them, he confirmed. Like Miss Bennet? I asked knowingly. Exactly, he said with that same smirk. I wanted to punch him but held back. I bet you're like me. Prefer a lot of hair up top, but none down below, huh? I said, winking again. Bald is nice. He chuckled. With that information gathered, I knew it was time to move on before I lost my temper. I need to circulate now, make sure everyone's where they should be. If you run into any trouble, find me, I said firmly as I walked away from him. I muttered curses to myself. When I returned to the other side of the room, the band had started playing and a man approached Ava, asking her to dance. She politely declined, then grabbed my arm and pulled me onto the dance floor before I could sit down. As we danced, I kept an eye on Mr. Benson to make sure he wasn't watching us. I didn't want him to realize I was Ava's husband yet. I was still planning my next moves and didn't want them ruined before I was ready. I was still trying to piece together the final parts of the puzzle I was dealing with, and it was already 9:30. Nervous stress was making my stomach churn. The song ended, and I started heading back to our table, but then the band started a slow song. Ava pulled me back onto the dance floor, holding me tightly. Ava always liked dancing close, but this time, it felt suffocating. At one point during the dance, I noticed Benson watching us, looking tense. I smiled at him and gave a thumbs up, then tried to ignore him. I wondered if seeing me dance with Ava had made him suspicious about my identity, but at that point, I didn't care anymore. After that dance, we returned to our table. I had just sat down when Andrew Thomas approached us, holding a small package. He pulled Ava aside, whispered something, handed her the package, and left. Ava came back to the table, hiding the package behind her back, and leaned down to speak to me. I need to go to the restroom, she said. When I looked into her eyes, I sensed something troubling. Don't do it, I warned. Do what? She asked innocently. I grabbed her arm and held it firmly as I stared into her eyes. You know exactly what I mean. I'm not stupid. I know what's going on here. Stop it now, I demanded. I don't know what you're talking about, she insisted. I just need to go to the restroom. Ava pulled her arm away from me and walked off without looking back. While Ava was gone, I pieced together the troubling details. It started when she began calling Eric, which bothered me, and worsened with her sudden depression over the national pharmaceutical deal. Despite her not doing anything wrong, she blamed herself. Her numerous meetings with Andrew and Eric, her tracking of her menstrual cycle despite being on birth control, and our argument about shaving all added to my suspicions. Earlier that evening, I saw Ava undressed in our living room through the window. Eric's hand reached out from a chair and touched her, causing her to tense and then relax. Realizing the situation, I went to the garage to give them a chance to stop. As I headed upstairs to confront Ava, I peeked out the front door and saw Eric scurrying across the street to his car, like the rat bastard he is. My guess was that Benson saw Ava, decided he wanted her, and made that clear to Eric. She was the deal breaker. I figured Benson must have demanded that she shave herself for him. I didn't waste time trying to understand why this was all happening. I just knew I had to stop it before it went too far. Knowing Andrew and Eric were deeply involved, I had to mess up their plans, and try to screw them over in the process. The final piece of the puzzle was Ava going to the restroom. I was certain Andrew's package contained shaving cream and a razor. Ava was probably in there shaving so she could give Benson what he wanted. Well, screw her, too. It was 9:45, and Ava still hadn't returned to the table. I was getting anxious because time was running out. Without a clear plan, I decided to find Ava and physically take her home, dealing with the consequences later. As I headed toward the door, the band announced a break. An idea struck me. Seeing Benson, Andrew, and Eric together at the bar, I knew I had my audience. I walked over to the band as they were setting down their instruments and spoke to the lead singer. "Can you keep your mic on? I need to make a few announcements." "Sure, no problem," he replied, handing me his wireless mic. "It's already on, just flip the switch on the side, and you're good to go." "Thanks." I paced back and forth, trying to gather my thoughts, then, taking a deep breath, I switched on the microphone. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I began. Many guests turned to look, but the room was still noisy. "Can I have your attention, please?" I repeated, louder. Gradually, the chatter died down to a few murmurs. Spotting Ava returning from the restroom, I glanced over at Benson, Andrew, and Eric, who were watching me with curious expressions. "Can I get everyone's attention now?" The room was quiet, and Ava stood in the doorway, staring at me. "Thank you. I just want to take a moment to speak on this special occasion. First, I want to say what a fantastic party this is. Let's give a round of applause to those who organized it." Almost everyone started clapping, and Ava slowly walked toward me, her face showing fear. "I've had a few drinks, and I'm feeling good, so I hope this comes out right. I want to share some things about my wife, Ava, and me." I smiled at Ava and then turned to the three men at the bar. I couldn't tell what they were thinking, but they didn't seem pleased. "First, some good news. Ava and I are expecting a baby." Applause broke out among the guests. Ava covered her face with her hands, looking mildly embarrassed. To anyone unaware of the truth, Eric appeared angry, Andrew puzzled, and Benson's expression was unreadable. "And there's more good news. Ava informed me tonight she's getting a promotion for her work on the national pharmaceutical deal. I hear Ava, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Harris, and Mr. Benson will be upstairs signing the contract. Isn't that great?" More applause filled the room. "Oh God, please stop." Ava's voice reached me. She halted about 10 feet away and slowly sank to the floor. The first two jerks looked furious, while Benson seemed almost amused. "This evening started off so oddly that I figured I'd share it with you. When I got home from work tonight, I found my wife in the bathroom about to shave, and not her legs or armpits." Some laughter rippled through the crowd, but most sat in stunned silence. "We argued about it. She said it was supposed to be a surprise for me, and I told her not to do it. I thought I'd won that argument, or at least I thought so. Now I realize she wasn't shaving for me, she was doing it on Eric's orders. Ava just came out of the restroom, and I believe she shaved herself while she was in there. Now I'm sure you're all wondering why Eric Harris would demand Ava shave her." An audible gasp echoed through the room. Ava was now lying on the floor, crying, and most guests stared at me as if witnessing a disaster unfold. Now there were only two jerks left. It seemed Benson had bolted. Eric's face burned red, and he trembled. Andrew strode toward me as if he thought he could make me stop. "Ava shaved because she was supposed to be a gift to Mr. Benson tonight, and he wanted her shaved. Apparently, your company's management thinks it's good business to encourage employees to sleep with potential clients to secure contracts, even if it wrecks a marriage." Andrew was now right in front of me, trying to wrest the microphone away. I yanked it out of his grasp and switched it off. "Listen, jerk, you try grabbing this mic again, and I'll drop you like a sack of bricks. Actually, come to think of it, I might do that anyway." Andrew stepped back from me and glanced at Eric while they exchanged looks. I switched the microphone back on. "Lastly, this is for Andrew and Eric. I'm filing a lawsuit against this company for what you did to my marriage, and I expect a decent settlement. Part of that will be your termination, you two a-holes, and anyone else involved in this mess. Good night, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your party." The room fell into complete silence as I set the microphone down and walked over to where Ava lay on the floor. I squatted beside her. "Ava?" She looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Lucas, I'm so..." "Don't say anything." I cut in. "Do you still think you'll get that promotion?" I stood up and scanned the room. People stared at us, but when I looked back, they turned away. I glanced down at Ava one last time, then left the room. I grabbed my coat and crossed the lobby toward the exit when Eric blocked my path. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he demanded. "Yeah," I replied. "I screwed you before you and Zenith could screw my wife, and I hope I cost you millions. I'd hate to think we went through this for just a few $100,000. You're going to pay for this," Eric warned. "Actually, I think you'll be the one paying," I retorted. "Along with my lawsuit, I'll be having a chat with the SEC. They might find your company's business practices interesting." I turned to leave, but Eric grabbed my arm. "Just a minute, I'm not done with you," he insisted. I shook off his grip. "Touch me again, and you won't be walking out of here tonight," I warned as I walked away. I heard him cursing under his breath. When I got home, I headed straight for the liquor cabinet and grabbed a bottle of scotch, drinking slowly to drown everything out. By my second drink, I noticed something blue in a potted plant. It was a blue plastic case, hidden under the leaves. Opening it confirmed my suspicion. I had seen something fall from the bathroom wastebasket earlier in the week but hadn't thought to look in the plant. I placed the case on the coffee table next to the scotch and poured myself another drink. "It's completely full," I muttered, staring at the contents. After more drinks, I woke up Saturday morning on the sofa, the scotch bottle nearly empty. My head throbbed, and my mouth tasted awful. Dizzy and with a protesting stomach, I started the coffee maker and took a shower. Upstairs, there was no sign of Ava, and I didn't expect her to be home. She was likely scared or angry after I had disrupted everything at Zenith. The shower helped, and after 2 cups of coffee, I sat back on the sofa, pondering my next move. It pained me to think about how much I had loved Ava. Her willingness to be intimate with a customer for a deal, and even shaving for him on Eric's orders, was devastating. I doubted I could forgive her, but I felt she deserved a chance to explain, if she wanted to. I wouldn't chase her down for an explanation if she didn't feel the need to explain. Maybe I didn't need to know why. The why would only matter if she wanted another chance with me. I couldn't think of anything to do except wait and see if Ava reached out to me. I started wondering where she had spent the night. Remembering how she looked when I left the party, I felt a pang of guilt for leaving her on the floor like that. I realized I should have taken her home with me. I wasn't proud of myself, but in the moment, I was hurt and angry, and I felt no sympathy for Ava. The more I dwelled on it, the worse I felt, and the more I wondered where she was staying. I was still sitting on the sofa at 11 o'clock when the phone rang. I figured it might be Ava calling, and I debated whether to answer. I picked up on the 6th ring. "Mr. Bennett?" "Yes, this is Special Agent Mark Walker, of the FBI," the voice on the phone said. "Is your wife with you?" "My wife isn't home," I replied. Why would the FBI want to talk to Ava? I wondered. "No problem. I need to speak with you," Agent Walker said. "Me?" I asked. "What's this about?" "I'd prefer not to discuss it over the phone," he said. "Can you come to my office this afternoon?" "I suppose so," I said. "Where are you located?" Agent Walker gave me directions to his office, and we agreed to meet at 2 o'clock that afternoon. After hanging up, I tried to figure out why the FBI would be interested in me. I guessed it might relate to one of the cases I'd recently worked on, but if that were true, why couldn't he just tell me over the phone? Over the years, I'd spoken with various law enforcement agencies about cases I was involved in, and it never bothered me, but for some reason, this invitation from the FBI left me feeling uneasy. At 1 o'clock, I dressed in jeans and a sweater and drove into town to meet with Agent Walker. I parked my car in a garage across from the high-rise where the FBI offices were located in downtown Charlotte. I took the elevator up to the 7th floor and told the receptionist my name. "I'm here to see Special Agent Walker," I said. "Have a seat, and I'll let him know you're here," she replied. I waited only 2 minutes before he entered the lobby to greet me. Unlike the expensive Armani suit from the night before, Special Agent Walker was now dressed in blue Dockers and a white Oxford shirt, without a tie. "Mr. Bennett, thanks for coming in," he said. "Please, follow me." I followed him into a conference room, and as I sat down, Agent Walker offered me a cup of coffee, which I accepted. He poured 2 cups from the coffee maker on a nearby table and handed one to me. After taking a sip of his own coffee, he sat down across from me. "Should I call you Special Agent Walker, or Mr. Benson?" I asked. "Why don't you try Mark?" he replied. "And may I call you Lucas?" "Lucas will be fine. I imagine you must be pretty confused right now," Mark said. "Yes, I am, but I think I'm starting to understand what's going on," I said. "So you were undercover as Mr. Benson?" "That's correct. I'm relying on your discretion to keep everything we discuss here confidential. I'm an investigator myself, so I understand the importance of confidentiality," I said. "I'm still unsure if you're on my side or not. I hope you can explain all of this to me, including how my wife got caught up in this mess. I'll tell you what I can and answer your questions as long as it doesn't jeopardize our investigation." "All right, I'll listen," I said. "But I have to tell you I'm really angry that my wife was manipulated like this. This situation may have ruined my marriage." "Things might not be as dire as you think," Mark said reassuringly. "Let me fill you in first, and then you can ask your questions." "That works for me," I replied. "Earlier this year, the Security and Exchange Commission contacted the FBI," he began. "They received troubling information about Zenith's business practices from an insider and asked us to investigate. After following up on the sex lead, we found enough evidence to warrant further inquiry. I can't divulge details of our investigation, but it led us to conduct undercover operations." Mark stood up and started pacing as he continued talking. "During our investigation, we discovered that Zenith was attempting to interest National Pharmaceutical in a merger. The real Mr. Benson, concerned about Zenith's methods, spoke with one of our agents. Since no one from Zenith had met Mr. Benson, he agreed to cooperate by allowing me to assume his identity. I convinced Mr. Harris and Mr. Thomas that I was Mr. Benson and led them to believe I was interested in their merger proposal, possibly even signing a contract. They eagerly anticipated millions from the deal. I pretended to hesitate, expressing interest in talking to other firms first. The goal was to see how they would try to persuade me to sign with them." "So you involved my wife?" I asked. "Not exactly," he replied. "During my initial visits to Zenith, I met your wife. As I was escorted to the conference room to meet with Andrew and Eric, I mentioned to Eric that I wanted to speak with Mrs. Bennett. His response was, 'She's quite attractive, isn't she?' I agreed, but that wasn't my reason for wanting to talk to her." "Why did you want to talk to her?" I inquired. "I told Eric that because Ava was head of the accounting department, I wanted to discuss the financial health of the company I was supposedly planning to merge with. The real reason was that your wife had alerted the SEC about how Zenith was conducting business." "So Ava knew you were working undercover for the FBI?" I asked. "No, she didn't. I couldn't tell her," Mark replied. "The information she provided to the SEC implicated people higher up in the company than Andrew and Eric. She implicated the company president and the CEO. Given that my mission was to investigate Andrew and Eric, I couldn't be sure she wouldn't expose me to protect them." "So Ava blew the whistle on the company executives?" I didn't know what that meant for me. If she didn't know Benson was a fake, was she planning to go through with it at the party? I had a lot of questions for Mark but decided to wait until he finished to see if he would provide any answers in his explanation. As I was saying, I hinted to Eric that I might back out of the deal. So he asked what it would take to secure my commitment to Zenith. I inquired what he had to offer. That's when Eric said, "I noticed you found Ava Bennett attractive. How would you like to get with her?" I was taken aback by that. I expected a bribe. Curious to see where this would lead, I indicated I might be interested, but I didn't commit. The next part may be difficult for you to hear, but it's crucial to the story. There's nothing you can say that would be more upsetting than what I've already been through," I said. "Okay then." I waited a few days and then met with Eric again. He asked if I had thought over his offer. I clarified if his offer meant arranging for me to have intimacy with your wife, and he confirmed. Trying not to seem too eager, I replied that I was interested but still unsure if she would be worth it. Eric reassured me she would be and mentioned she had shaved. Wouldn't you like that? He asked. So you never suggested that Ava shave herself? I asked. No. Since I hadn't planned on having intimacy with her, that idea never crossed my mind. I was also unsure how Eric could deliver on his promise, so I asked him how he planned to convince a married woman to agree to this in exchange for a contract signature. Don't worry about that. If you want her, she's yours, shaved and all, was his response. That despicable guy. Who does he think he is? He's a sleazy bastard. The more he talked about me having intimacy with your wife, the more excited he seemed. I got the impression he had more reasons for pushing his offer than just securing the contract. I let him continue and then asked when he could arrange for me to meet with your wife. He immediately said we could do it at the company Christmas party on the 20th. So you were really going to go through with it? You were going to have intimacy with my wife just to keep your undercover investigation going? I asked. No, that wasn't my plan at all. Mark clarified. Firstly, it would be unethical for me to do so. Secondly, I was almost certain the room where I was supposed to meet your wife would be bugged with hidden cameras and microphones to gather evidence. They wanted to use it not just to persuade me to sign the contract but also to potentially blackmail me. How were you planning to get out of it? I inquired. I planned to back out at the last moment, claiming the conditions weren't right. Then I would propose closing the deal under the condition that Mrs. Bennett would join me in my hotel room after the party. Once alone, I intended to reveal my identity and bring her here for questioning. Our plan was to arrest Andrew and Eric today. By this morning, we expected to have enough evidence to charge them both. Then last night, you approached me and introduced yourself, saying you were with security. I knew who you were and feared you might be involved in their scheme. I wasn't sure which side you were on until your speech. Mark continued. Oh, damn. I said. I hope I didn't mess up your investigation, but I couldn't just stand by and let my wife be used in some business deal. I understand. Mark reassured me. You actually helped. Your actions prevented me from having to attend the meeting with them last night at 10 o'clock. I left with my cover intact and was able to talk to Eric again this morning. He offered me a large sum to sign today. I agreed to meet him in his office on Monday, where we plan to arrest him when he hands over the money. That's when we'll shut down Zenith's operations and thoroughly investigate every deal they've been involved in over the past 3 years. I still don't know where Ava stands in all of this. I admitted. Your wife was trying to do the right thing by reporting the company, he said. Regarding her involvement in the offer made to me, I suspect Eric may have been coercing her, possibly blackmailing her. Did they mention using protection? I asked. Yes. Once I agreed to the deal, Eric emphasized that Ava insisted I wear protection. We wouldn't want to get the poor girl pregnant, would we? Eric said. Now I knew I needed to find Ava. I wanted to hear her side of the story. She wasn't entirely innocent in this mess, but there were circumstances that might explain her actions. That's about all I can share for now, Mark said. Do you have any other questions? Not at the moment. Good. Again, please remember not to discuss any of this investigation with anyone. Also, I advise you not to tell your wife anything yet. Wait until we have Andrew and Eric under indictment before you reveal that this was all an FBI sting operation. That should only be a couple of days from now. We'll want to speak with her then anyway. I agreed to keep quiet about the investigation. Mark told me he would call when it was okay to tell Ava about the FBI sting. He also mentioned they might want to depose me to get my side of the story. We shook hands, and I left the building. When I got home, there was a message from Ava asking me to call her. I dialed the number she left, and a woman answered. May I ask who's calling? The voice inquired. Tell her it's her husband, I replied. Ava's voice sounded nervous when she got on the line. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you all day. Not all day, I corrected her. I was home until 1 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, that's about when I started calling you then. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. She needed to prove she was ready to explain herself, so I stayed quiet. "Lucas, can I come home?" she asked. "This is your home, isn't it? You should be here now," I replied. "I'll be there in an hour." "Okay," I said, then hung up. I checked the clock. It was already 5 o'clock. I decided to have dinner ready when she arrived so we could talk afterward. I started cooking and then went upstairs to prepare for what I anticipated would be a difficult conversation. Returning downstairs, I grabbed the blue case from the coffee table and put it in my pocket. I cooked spaghetti with meatballs and made a salad, then I opened a bottle of Chianti. Ava walked in at 6:05, and dinner was ready. When she saw the meal and the wine, some tension visibly eased from her face. She realized things might not be as bad as she feared. We sat down at the table without speaking at first. I poured the wine, and we began eating. After a few minutes of uncomfortable silence, I asked Ava where she had spent the night. "One of my friends drove me home after you left," she answered. "Oh, so you didn't stay for the rest of the party?" I remarked, unable to resist a slight jab. "You pretty much ended the party with your speech," she retorted. "I suppose I owe some people apologies for that. Not to you, and certainly not to Andrew or Eric." "I guess you're right. I owe you an apology," she conceded. "Let's finish dinner first, and then talk." I interrupted her, suggesting we table the conversation for later. We fell silent again, with nothing else to discuss between us. After dinner, Ava began loading dishes into the dishwasher, but I interrupted her. "You can clean up later. We need to talk now," I insisted. We moved to the family room and sat facing each other. "Do you want to tell me everything, or should I start asking questions? Either way, I need the truth," I said firmly. "I'll tell you everything," she replied. "You probably know when it began. It was the day after your Christmas party. Eric called me and said the big deal they had with National Pharmaceutical was in jeopardy. He said Mr. Benson insisted he'd only sign if I agreed to have intimacy with him. I was furious. I couldn't believe he'd ask that. But Eric said the deal was crucial for the company, promising a big reward, money and a promotion. I didn't want to, but Eric pressured me, saying many people depended on me. I said I needed time to think. They stressed me out so much I couldn't think straight. When you came home, I couldn't bear to hurt you like that. Eric and Mr. Thomas kept pushing me all day Monday. Eric warned it would be my fault if the deal failed, and they'd fire me if I spoke up. I tried to tell you what I could. I knew if you knew everything, you'd do something rash, and I'd lose my job. By Tuesday, I refused again, so they told me to reconsider. Then Eric claimed the company was missing over $100,000. He threatened an audit that would make me look like a thief for years. Eric said I'd go to jail unless I cooperated. He promised the money and promotion if I obeyed but threatened charges if I didn't. In the end, I had no choice but to agree to what he wanted. Eric and Mr. Thomas kept pressuring me daily to make sure I didn't back out. They insisted I was doing the right thing and tried convincing me that you'd understand if you knew how crucial this deal was. I had been listening quietly until then, but I was starting to get angry. You can't think for a second that I would have ever been okay with what you were doing. You should have told me everything. I would have found a way to help you out, I said. I know, Ava replied. Once I made up my mind to go through with it, I felt a bit relieved. But I felt so guilty about what it was doing to you. You had to understand. I was terrified of going to jail. I felt like I had to take the risk. On Friday, Eric called me into his office and said Mr. Benson wanted me to shave my hair off. I told him I couldn't do that because you would be upset, but he said it was non-negotiable. If I didn't shave, Mr. Benson would walk away from the deal. Eric told me to do it before the party, without letting you see, and later I was supposed to tell you it was a surprise. He said if you got angry, all I had to do was apologize and let it grow back. The problem was, you came home earlier than expected and caught me getting ready to shave. So was I right? Did you shave in the restroom at the party? I asked. Yes. Ava looked down at her hands. Mr. Thomas sent someone to buy a razor and shaving cream, and I went into the restroom and did it. When I came back to the party, I saw you with the microphone, trying to get everyone's attention. I was so scared. I had no idea what you were doing, and I didn't know if there was any way I could stop you. I couldn't believe you said I was pregnant. I didn't say you were pregnant. I clarified. I said we were planning to have a baby. We had discussed this, right? Well, yes, but what? Are we going to start a family or not? She asked. Yes, we are. I'll stop taking my birth control pills tomorrow, and then we can begin. One more thing. Did you tell Benson he had to use protection? Eric said he would make sure Benson used protection. She replied. I'm glad he did, because I hadn't thought about it. I was so stressed I wasn't thinking clearly. Then you gave your speech, which pretty much ended my career at Zenith and likely killed the deal with National Pharmaceutical. So what you're saying is Andrew and Eric pressured and blackmailed you into agreeing to have intimacy with Benson to close a business deal. They also insisted you shave yourself, but I messed things up by catching you in the act. Despite me telling you not to, you still went ahead and shaved. In the end, the only reason you didn't sleep with Benson is because my speech ruined everything. Is that about right? Yes, but I don't blame you for what you did. I understand your reaction. She said. Oh, good. So you forgive me for trying to stop my wife from sleeping with another man? I said sarcastically. That's not what I meant. I know you had every right to react the way you did, and I shouldn't be upset with you. I'm upset with myself. I should have been honest with you from the start. Do you think you can ever forgive me? Ava asked. That depends. I replied. Is that everything? Have you told me all I need to know about what's been going on? Yes, I've told you everything. I love you, and I can't bear the thought of losing you because of this mess I got myself into. Ava said. Well, things don't look as bad as they did at first. I said, watching Ava's smile slowly return. I just have a couple of questions I need answers to, and then maybe we can move past this. Okay, what questions? I could hear the relief in her voice. I took the blue case out of my pocket and tossed it onto the coffee table. I found this in the trash the other day, and it's full. You threw away all your birth control pills last week, but you didn't tell me, and even tried to make me believe you were still taking them. Just 5 minutes ago, you said you'd stop taking them tomorrow. Can you explain that to me? Ava looked like I had hit her. Her mouth opened a few times, but no words came out. When she finally spoke, I could tell she was lying. You're right. I stopped taking my pills. I planned to let you get me pregnant and then surprise you. I knew how much you wanted to start a family, so I thought it would be a nice surprise when I told you. That plan would have only worked if we were actually having intimacy, but we haven't, since the day before you stopped taking your pills. I pointed out. I was just so upset about what Mr. Thomas and Eric wanted me to do that I wasn't in the mood for it during that time. Ava explained. Were you aware that last night was the most fertile night of your cycle? I asked. That question seemed to stun her again. No, I wasn't aware of that. I had too much on my mind to think about it. She said. It just strikes me as odd that you were planning to have intimacy with Benson last night, which happened to be in the middle of your menstrual cycle, and it never occurred to you to insist on using protection, but Eric thought to require it. I pointed out. What are you trying to say? She asked. That you knowingly risked getting pregnant. I would never do that. She insisted, clearly shaken. I could see Ava was deeply upset. I decided to stop playing games. One more question, Ava. I began. How long have you been involved with Eric? What? Was all she managed to say. No more lies. I know you were tracking your cycle and marked last night on your planner. I know Eric insisted Benson use protection, and since we weren't intimate, Eric is the only one left. He wanted to get you pregnant, didn't he? I looked at Ava. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't try to answer. It was Eric who wanted you to shave, not Benson, and you did it despite me telling you not to. It shows he has more influence over you than I do. And in case you think I'm guessing, last night when I came home, I looked in and saw you without clothes in the living room, with Eric touching you intimately. He kissed your stomach, the way a man kisses a woman he wants to have a baby with. Did you think I'd be so naive to believe it could be mine? Or were you planning to leave me from the start? You spent last night with him, didn't you? Ava cried loudly as I stood up and left the room. When I returned to the kitchen with my suitcase, Ava looked up at me. Seeing what I was doing, she jumped out of her chair and ran to me. Please don't leave me. I love you. I don't love Eric. I told you he blackmailed me. I had no choice but to do what he asked. Why didn't you just keep taking your birth control pills and lie to Eric about it? You had no problem lying to me. Honestly, I trust what you tell that rat bastard more than anything you've told me lately. I replied. By the way, I forgot to mention that last night, while I was watching you and that a-hole, I heard you say, I love you, to him. So where does that leave me? I don't love him. If I'm pregnant, I'll have a termination. I love you. Please, you have to believe me. She begged. No, I don't. And as for the baby, don't abort it just because of me. Ava collapsed on the floor, crying. When I glanced back from the garage door, she looked as devastated as she did when I left her at the party the night before. I felt no love for her anymore, only disgust. Leaving the house we worked so hard to build was hard, but it held no happy memories for me. Thankfully, we hadn't lived there long enough to form those memories. Leaving the house we worked so hard to build was hard, but it held no happy memories for me. Thankfully, we hadn't lived there long enough to form those memories. It's been over 2 years since I walked out on Ava. After leaving her, I moved into a furnished apartment and tried to start fresh. That's when the nightmares began. Unhappy with my job, I quit and headed to California. Once settled, I started my own insurance investigation company. I reached out to Josh Campbell, who became my partner. 2 months later, he mentioned that Natalie Evans wanted to join us when she heard we were starting our own firm. Natalie moved out here 14 months ago, and 2 months later, we started dating. After 3 months, we decided to move in together. I was surprised at how quickly I fell in love again. While I wasn't rushing into marriage, I enjoyed having someone special to share my life with. I've kept in touch with my friends back in Charlotte through several contacts, including Special Agent Mark Walker. It turned out that Ava had exposed the company president and CEO at Eric Harris' urging. Eric hoped this would expose their shady dealings and lead to their dismissal by the board of directors. He assumed he would then become the company president of Zenith. It seems Ava wasn't lying when she said she didn't love Eric. She was manipulating him because he was infatuated with her, believing he could win her over to get what he wanted. After I left, Eric tried for over a month to impregnate Ava but failed. It was later discovered he was sterile. His wife learned of his affair with Ava and divorced him. Eric was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for his actions at Zenith. Andrew also received jail time, serving a minimum of 2 years at a federal minimum security prison. Ava was fired from Zenith, and shortly after, the company underwent reorganization before being bought out by a larger consulting firm. The last I heard, Ava was teaching accounting at a community college just outside Columbus, Ohio. I try not to dwell on Ava. The pain is still too fresh to reminisce about the good times we shared. I don't miss her, which is a relief. Natalie has filled the gap Ava left in my life, which is why I married her. Now I sit here, looking down at Natalie, wondering if I should wake her up. Not to mention the dream I had again, but to tell her I love her. Last night, Natalie mentioned that whenever I'm ready for a baby, all I had to do is ask. But you better order early because delivery takes 9 months. Natalie joked. I'm considering placing my request tomorrow. By the way, if you were wondering about Zenith, you were right if you guessed Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. And that's the end of our story. A powerful reminder of how trust can be shattered and lives can be forever changed by the choices we make. Lucas's journey from betrayal to rebuilding his life is a testament to resilience and the search for true happiness, even after the darkest of times. As he moves on and finds love again with Natalie, it shows that there's always hope, even when everything seems lost. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and the unexpected twists life can throw at us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.